Anyway, as all of you have known, or as all of you have already known, so this world can be next to can be next to nuclear wars actually. So or nuclear war or nuclear wars actually. So so I'm sorry for my clumsy manner, or I'm sorry for my clumsy manner, or my speaking manner is, how should I say, staggering, yeah. And I'm speaking English language ploddingly, and as you have already known. And if you have, but actually, I think I think you can understand its cause, or its reason if you are, I mean, if you are frequent listeners of my podcast. But and that is because, if you are listening to this episode, among this episode of my podcast for the first time, I mean, so if you encountered this my podcast for the first time, and you are listening to this episode, so I should tell you why I'm really bad at speaking English language. And I'm a native speaker of English language, which means I can speak English natively, as you have, and you can easily understand that because you can easily understand that I'm a native speaker of English language. That is because, so my English has, or I have an accent in my speaking English. So which is why, so I'm sometimes I make not sometimes I make many mistakes when speaking English. So, and of course, to start with, by the way, my mother tongue is Japanese, so which is why, and of course, when I speak Japanese language, or when I speak or when I'm speaking my own mother tongue, so I make a lot of mistakes in my using mother tongue. And mother tongue is such a thing, which is what I think. So for example, so if you are, for example, if you are a native speaker of Chinese language, or if you are native speaker of Arabic language, and anyway, so whatever language you use, so you speak your mother tongue, making mistakes, well, simultaneously making mistakes, which is not quite natural for almost all the native speakers of their own mother tongues. And that is the case to, of course, that is the case to English language. And so many people speak English language as their own mother tongue. And so maybe professional announcers do not make mistakes when speaking their mother tongues. Actually, that is because they are announcers as they are experts as announcers. So which is why, they are not allowed to make mistakes, or making mistakes is not permitted when speaking out in public places, in the case of announcers, for example. By the way, so I began to speak the digression anyway. What I'm speaking of is a story not related without any relation to to the main track of this episode. And if you have already checked out the title and the conclusion of this episode, I think you have already noticed that what I'm speaking out is not has nothing to do with the main track of this episode. And I should tell you the title and the conclusion of this episode. And even nuclear wars predecessors makes the followers feel easier. And the conclusion is, President Putin has a huge responsibility in a way. And this is, if you imagine who is wrong in your crime named theft. Please imagine such a situation. Please imagine a situation of somebody stealing something, and who is wrong, or who has to be arrested, or you know who has to be apprehended, or who has to be and who has to get under arrest is it's the perpetrator, of course. The perpetrator who stole something, or who took something without permission. And that is a theft, and the perpetrator is a thief. But actually, so apart from I think there are many causes, or there are many reasons why that perpetrator committed that crime. And for example, so some people wanted to enjoy stealing something for enjoy some kind of excitement caused by committing something illegal. And another cause is that so that perpetrator might want to hurt somebody else whose belongings that theft took without the permission of the owner of that belonging. Anyway, so I'm sorry for my complicated explanation. And another manner is to hurt somebody. For example, the perpetrator hates, or the perpetrator dislikes. And another stuff is that so he or she may, might not know that action was stealing. For example, so please imagine, imaginary. This is an imaginary situation, but for example, so somebody took maybe somebody accidentally took a pen of somebody else. And maybe he or she, or the perpetrators of that pen was his or her, was his own, or her own. But actually, that the owner of the pen was another person different from the perpetrator. So in which case, the theft can be established, or in such a case, the perpetrator committed theft, or the perpetrator committed stealing accidentally. And but actually, so if the most general and the most comprehensible reason is that the perpetrator didn't have money, which is why that perpetrator couldn't pay money for buying, for example, pen or food or something else necessary for his or her surviving. So which is why, so in such a case, perpetrator is wrong about that stealing. But actually, so it's possible to say that the perpetrator wouldn't have committed that crime if the social system of distributing wealth equally was working, or had been working properly. So what I'm saying is that, so it's possible to say that if some if the if the society that theft that thief, if that thief belong. I'm sorry for my complicated explanation. Just the safety, the theft or the perpetrator belongs to a human society. And if the human society has a decent system of distributing its own wealth or its own money to equally among the citizens of that human society. Please imagine such a situation. So I try to explain that if the human society, so the safety belongs to had a decent system or decent scheme of distributing or distributing or dispensing the wealth or the money equally among citizens. But actually, so explaining using such a long sentence in this situation, or in this speaking manner, can be co- confusing, because who belongs to which society can become so obscure, or blood can become blood. So which is why, so I use such a situation, like so there is a perpetrator, or there's a thief who belongs to a human society. And the human society has, if the human society had a decent scheme of distributing things, or distributing wealth. And anyway, so if that such a distributing system was working well or working properly or working decently, the safe, I'm sorry for my complicated explanation. Well, the safe wouldn't have occurred, or the safe wouldn't have committed that crime, or yeah, it's possible to say such a thing. Or so correct using the tense correctly. So the safe wouldn't commit. The safe wouldn't occur, or the thief wouldn't commit such a crime named theft. Theft, or yeah, theft. The thief is a person, and the theft is a name of crime. Anyway, so in such a case, the human society it's possible to say that the human society has a tiny portion of responsibility for that theft. Yeah. So which is it's a taking a look at that crime in your perspective, or in your aspect, it's possible to say that that the entire society can be responsible for the entire society can be partly responsible for that crime, and like which, so applying applying this idea to the Russo-Ukrainian war, and I'm recording this episode in January in 2023, and well, actually it's the beginning of January in 2023, and so the Russo-Ukrainian war has been prolonged yet, and maybe there's a rumor, there's a hearsay that the Russian president Mr. Vladimir Putin may use nuclear weapons against Ukraine. But actually, so if he uses nuclear weapons, I don't say if he used, but if he uses nuclear weapons, so as a political leaders may begin to use their own nuclear weapons. So in such a case, so if he uses nuclear weapons, or which means, so if President Putin uses nuclear weapons, so he becomes a predecessor. He become a predecessor, not predecessors. He's a one person, and he become a predecessor in using nuclear weapons after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And so as a political leaders, for example, so the closest country to my country having and the closest country having a nuclear weapons to my country is maybe North Korea or China. It can be said that China is a closed country having nuclear weapons. But actually, so so North Korea may begin to use nuclear weapons for attacking, or for assaulting other countries, and another possibility is that so India may use their own nuclear weapons against Pakistan, for example. So such a thing may happen in the near future, actually, thanks to that predecessor named Mr. Vladimir Putin. Like which, so which is why, so I wrote that title, and which means, so even in nuclear wars, predecessors makes followers feel easier, and the conclusion is President Putin has a huge responsibility in a way. So but actually, so so he has to be he should be responsible for the nuclear weapons used by Russian Federation in the time of his presidency. I mean, that is a scope, or that is a scope, or that is a range of his responsibility. But actually, so afterwards, thinking about afterwards. So, for example, if some another country, for example, if North Korea uses nuclear weapons for attacking the United States, and it's for example, it's John Kim who has to be responsible for the used nuclear weapons for attacking attacking the United States. But actually, so maybe the reason might be, for example, this is a hypothetical reason, but actually, John Kim may find it may find easier for him to use nuclear weapons. That is because thanks to the predecessor and another country, for example, India or other countries may find it easier using their nuclear weapons against other enemies, for example. And so that is because Mr. President Putin used nuclear weapons against Ukraine. So thanks to his decision, other countries may find easier using nuclear weapons against the enemies those countries hate. Which is why, in such a case, of course, President Putin do not have to be, that does not have to be, President Putin does not have to be responsible for those nuclear weapons used by other countries, because, he's the president of Russian Federation. But actually, in such a case, if he decides to use those Russian nuclear weapons, other countries or the political leaders of other countries may begin to use nuclear weapons. So which is why, so in such a case, somebody may say, there may somebody who may say that, so Mr. President Putin can be responsible partly responsible for the used nuclear weapons used by other countries. Which, such a thing can be possible. Such a thing is possible to be said. Which is what I'd like you to think about, or which is what I'd like you to know this time. So I'm thinking of ending this episode, and the title is even in nuclear wars, predecessors make the followers feel easier. And the conclusion is President Putin has a huge responsibility in a way. So that's it. Thank you very much for listening. See you. And there's a thing I would like to apologize for. So I used his name, Mr. John Kim, but actually, I used his name without adding Mr. or Mrs. or without adding Mr. So which is why, and by the way, he's a spring leader of North Korea or Democratic People's Republic of Korea. But actually, I'm sorry, but I called him without adding Mr. So which is why, let me apologize for how I called him. So Mr. John Kim, which is what I should have said without not just calling him John Kim.